is Keys to the Shop, episode 135, Staying Motivated in the Midst of Difficulty. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFurio. I'm your host for the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I always appreciate all of you tuning in to Keys to the Shop. If you haven't already subscribed to Keys to the Shop, I would encourage you to do so wherever you listen to podcasts. And also, it would be greatly appreciated if you would rate or review this show if it's been a real help to you in your career or your coffee shop. Let us know in the reviews and ratings over in iTunes. It helps the show gain visibility. And so thanks so much for that. Now, today we're going to be talking about finding motivation in the midst of difficulty. I think some of these thoughts are really going to be helpful for you because we all face different types of challenges in the midst of our work because there exists no perfect situation, no perfect people, or shop for that matter. So it's kind of like a roaster fire. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you become challenged in your motivation. So hopefully this is going to help you in the midst of whatever it is you happen to be going through in the cafe. Now, Keys to the Shop is brought to you by Prima Coffee. Prima Coffee is a leading specialty coffee equipment supplier who curates the best equipment from around the world to fit perfectly with the needs of both their enthusiast and professional customers. Helping you succeed in making great coffee at home or in your shops is what drives them. If you're looking for the best equipment and expert assistance to go along with it, look no further than prima-coffee.com. They have an expansive selection and a wealth of knowledge. If you're opening a store or expanding to a second or third location, getting the right equipment is absolutely essential, and I highly recommend having Prima on your side, helping you select that equipment. So again, go to prima-coffee.com, give them an email, call them, see how they can help you in your process of getting the right equipment for the job. Thank you so much, Prima, for your support of Keys to the Shop. Keys to the Shop is also brought to you by Pacific Foods, the fine people behind the Barista series line of non-dairy performance beverages designed specifically for professional baristas and the standards for excellence that they demand. Whether you're talking about soy, coconut, almond, rice, or oat milk, its ability to take the heat from steaming, produce an unmatched silky texture, and keep the flavor balance focused on coffee makes it a perfect choice for your cafe's menu. Pacific is a huge supporter of the barista community and the specialty coffee community. These products are born from their commitment to support those communities. I highly encourage you to go to pacificfoods.com to learn more about their Barista series line of non-dairy performance beverages and see how they can help elevate the offerings of non-dairy beverages to your customers. Thank you so much, Pacific, for your support. Keys to the Shop. All right, so today we're going to be talking about motivation, and it's really something we all need to think about and pursue throughout the day because we are, we get tired and things get difficult, and we search for motivation in all different areas, and I think there are some steps that we need to take in order to make sure that we're getting the right kind of motivation for us. And this episode is actually born from a question that was asked of me through a survey. Respondent recently put out a survey for Keys to the Shop audience asking about the show, asking about topics that they love hearing about and want to hear more about. And so one of the questions was essentially, how do you keep your head up as a barista, I'm assuming, when everyone around you is sort of, a demotivating force? It's not like it's a very motivating place to work or there's a lot of inspiration to draw from. It's seemingly people around them don't care, but you want to do the best job and you want to feel inspired when you come into work, but it's very difficult. And I know there are so many of us right now who are working in situations where we could list off really quickly the top maybe 10 things that we do not like about the way people work around us, the way the management is, or our leaders are. the way the cafe is, the coffee, etc. And we could go down the list because we tend to collect and organize very well the things that we don't like about where it is we work. And so no surprise here, I think the thread throughout this whole episode is going to be more toward what we can do to find motivation in the midst of our tendency to find things to be, upset about or to justify the lack of motivation. So I want to start with the idea that if you're in a situation where you feel like you're the only one who cares about quality, or you're pursuing specialty coffee in spite of your cafe, there is a real benefit to being in that position. I know just as well as anybody that there's a lot of things that are not benefits, but developing grit as a professional in building your inner character is one of the byproducts of having to go into work daily and toe the line for quality or personal responsibility for hospitality and service when you could get away with far, far less. Community is great for inspiration and getting momentum for your progress as a barista, but sometimes it can excuse us from developing roots within ourselves because we're relying on everybody else around us to support us. So it's kind of like the immune system has to be exposed to germs and bacteria in order to really develop some resiliency. And that's, I think, a good word, resiliency. If when trouble comes, you haven't developed that, and trouble will come as you grow as a professional, you won't be able to handle it as well. You won't have as much of a root in yourself as you will if you're able to weather the storms of having to be a person of integrity in the midst of a place where you are not supported. Okay? Now, it's difficult. I don't recommend that you live there for a long, long time, but I do think from personal experience, and I've gone through this, in several occasions, the benefit that I see in myself from having to go through those situations is you develop a root of integrity within yourself that you bring to the table in the midst of community, and you don't use community and other things like that as a excuse for not developing those things. The next thing I would say is you have to make sure that you're working according to the rules and standards that are not your own. You might disagree with how many pumps of sauce you put in a cup. I've worked with people who say, I'm not going to put that many pumps in there. That's ridiculous. Like 6 pumps in a 20 ounce. Oh my goodness. That's so many pumps. Hashtag too many pumps. And occasionally you would find people making the value judgment that, I'm going to put less in because I think it tastes better. And then all of a sudden the customer might, notice it, and heaven forbid they actually like it. And now you've got to deal with this issue of, now the customer is expecting something different than what other baristas are doing, all because one barista or a few baristas started to take matters into their own hands to change the expectations of the customers on behalf of the whole, on behalf of the business. So working according to the rules and standards doesn't mean that you have to be necessarily proud of those things. You don't have to be cherishing every smoothie. You don't have to be proud of the drizzle you have to put on top of whipped cream. Maybe you are. Great. But the point is that practicing submitting your will to the standard of somebody else is a practice of gaining humility. That is a precursor to becoming a great leader. And now I hope that one day you become a leader. And one of the great qualities of leaders is that they've practiced in being great followers. Okay? So they can, for the benefit of everybody involved, put aside their opinions, put aside their will, and look to see what the big picture is and live according to that. So you might not be in a place where you feel pride in every drink, but you can feel pride in your ability to adhere to those standards and even be enthusiastic about those standards in that they produce in you a character of humility and they contribute to the good of the entire shop. So there's that humility benefit that comes along with working in this difficult situation where you don't agree with the standards and the rules or the policies and things like that. And you're not really going to love the standards and policies of every place you work. There's always going to be something that's just like, I would do it different. So we have to embrace that. Now, in terms of motivation, no doubt we all know there are events like the SCA conference, Coffee Fest, throwdowns, competitions. There's magazines, books, YouTube channels, blogs still, Instagram accounts, and podcasts. Hey. And all types of media that are broadcast to the far reaches of the earth where you can tap into and feel connected to the industry. You should definitely always be looking for those resources, and they're very easy to find. It's just a click away, really. Now, that said, because of your ability to access so much information, you should be invested into looking into what the right things are for you. You should come into it consciously aware that there is a chance that you could just kind of binge on all of this information, but it doesn't really benefit you much because you're aimless in your pursuit of inspiration. So enter into the pursuit of resources consciously aware of your goals, your values, what you hope to get out of it. Don't just consume things because it's specialty coffee related. Okay, I mean, you can, but I find that there's a lot of stuff that I've read and that I've listened to over time that hasn't really contributed very much to what I'm actually needing in the moment, and targeting what you need in the moment to challenge you, to grow yourself as a professional, all of that is really going to be the name of the game. I've heard people listen to this show, for example, put up a rule for themselves that they're going to listen to it from beginning to end. I think that's really interesting. I've never done that, like episode 1 through episode 100-something. But I would much rather you find episodes that match what you need in the moment and use it as a reference instead of a novel. So I think a lot of resources should be treated that way, unless they actually are a novel, and then go ahead, just read it from beginning to end. So anyway, with media resources and community resources, enter into it consciously. What do you want to get out of it? Target the outcome. Now, I want to talk about role models, and I would encourage you, for the purpose of being motivated, find inspiration in role models who display the character traits you wish to be more true about yourself. This is going to take some work. It can't just be picking a champion or a successful business owner. There are a lot of business owners and there are a lot of champions who are not the greatest people. You have to enter into this already with your values in place, okay? There's a great book by Michael Gerber, who's the author of The E-Myth Revisited, which is a fantastic book for entrepreneurs to read. I would encourage you all to read that. But there's one that is a follow-up called The E-Myth Manager. And it's addressing people who work as managers in organizations who adopt the mission of the organization as their personal mission. And it's a challenge to that, to say, is that really the way you should do it? Should you just be a blank slate for somebody else to write on? And the encouragement is, no, you shouldn't do that. You should come into this thing already filled with what your mission and your values are. You don't come in as a blank slate. If you come in like a vacuum, there's just nothing there. As soon as the seal is cracked, anything that's around it will get sucked in. That includes the negative things. That includes the toxic things. This happens to people who work in coffee shops all the time. And this, what I'm saying about role models applies not only to champions and other people in the industry, but it also applies to people who you work directly under in the cafe. You can't go into work just looking to be, fed and invested into. You need to invest in yourself and know your values and know your mission before going in there, or else basically anything that's around you is going to get absorbed into your character, whether you know it or not, and that includes the toxic things. So enter into the pursuit of role models and mentorship with an idea of Does this person in their life display the kind of character traits in life and in business that I want to be more true about me? And that's a good place to start, okay? Don't just look for people who have credentials. Look for things beyond credentialing and letters after their name. I don't care if you're a Q grader. That means you can find quality coffee. It doesn't mean you're a quality person. So that's a good recommendation right there. Now, the next thing is, I think if you're in a place where you feel a lack of motivation, it would probably help you to process your day a little bit more predictably. One of the things that really stresses us out is having no time to be able to process what's happened during the day. I would encourage you to take time to process just 5 minutes at the beginning and at the end of every day. Consciousness is rare when it comes to barista work. We mimic to survive. We feel the effects. Examine the lay of the land before you go into work. Examine what it is you're going into and what you want to put into it, what you want to get out of it. And then afterwards, you can write about, talk about, think about what just happened that day. What did you experience that day? And give time to be able to debrief yourself, essentially. Without this, you're likely to absorb whatever is around you, and it's going to get in deeper than you can remove, okay? Don't just roll into the shift and roll out and then just wonder why you're not in a place where you feel motivated or inspired. Enter into the day consciously and try to go through it consciously and with a lot of awareness. And if you do so, you're going to find some clarity. And with clarity comes a lot more energy and a better chance at motivation and inspiration day to day. So the next thing I would say, a lot of us struggle with motivation because we feel like it's a dead-end job. We don't have any chance of moving forward, and we assume a lot of things about the organization that prevent us from actually asking questions. And that's, I think, one of the things we need to try to practice more often is giving some benefit of the doubt to leadership in the cafe. Ask leadership about opportunities. Ask them about what it would look like to make more money. What do I need to do to make more money? What do I need to do to become a manager? Or maybe we need a manager and that role doesn't exist, and maybe I'm the first one that is going to be a manager of the space. A lot of times the owners or the people in charge are so consumed with their own issues and own schedules that they don't really give much time to considering the upward mobility of the people that are working the shifts. So it often is the case when a barista drums up the gumption, I guess, to talk to a manager or an owner about something, that it might actually be the first time they thought about it. You'd be surprised. A lot of times, those are in leadership in the coffee shop are first-time leaders. They're not used to leading groups of people. They just wanted a coffee business, and now they feel just overwhelmed. And the idea that somebody would volunteer themselves to help them run the business sometimes is such a relief, and you never know until you ask. And you could even invent a position for yourself. I've done this on a couple of occasions, and I've also entered into positions based on the pursuit of a higher position and a higher paid position and negotiated the terms of that position. So you do have to take some of this into your own hands. Don't just wait for people to recognize your greatness and reward you for it. Schedule some time for people to recognize your greatness and suggest to them how they could reward you for it in a humble way, of course. So ask leadership about opportunities, start the conversation, get the ball rolling, and you might be surprised at what comes from that. And I'm not talking about going in there and saying, well, I have a lot of ideas for how to change this coffee bar. And there are so many things that you're doing that are wrong and that everybody hates about this place, and I am the fount of knowledge and the catalyst for change that you need. Here, pay me more to basically dismantle what you've built and do it the right way. This, not that you would actually say all those things, but that's the kind of thing that runs through somebody's mind when some barista or some manager takes on a attitude of I only want to pursue this because I want to fix what's wrong. You want to contribute to what's right first. and start these conversations from a place of generosity for the vision and for the company as it exists currently. And as trust is gained, you will be given a platform to make the changes that you probably already want to make. So moving on from there, I want to say, if you're a manager or if you're an owner, I recognize that it's harder for you because you're actually more invested emotionally and physically into the coffee shop than baristas are. It's only true because you're given a mantle of responsibility by virtue of your position that makes it harder for you to consider change to a career. So you feel like there's no way out, especially when things are bad. You feel like, well, I can't leave because everyone depends on me. And if you're an owner, you can't leave because this is your vitality. This is your business. So there's a desperation that comes in management and ownership that is unique. So I just wanted to recognize that that's a different thing, and it is a bit of a more extreme situation, but these principles still apply to those positions just the same. And in addition to that, you need to recognize that you actually do have the power to change things that you don't particularly like about the business. If you're the owner, you have the ultimate power to do these things. Having a deep sense of what your vision and values are for the company, of course, is the first step here, or else you're just going to make changes out of desperation. But for all the things that a barista wishes they could change about their job or their surroundings and the offerings, if you find yourself in that situation, a lot of that thought that, well, there's nothing we can do about it is not as true as you might think. I've seen several coffee shops take on a change of brand. I've seen them take on change of menu, pricing, policy, checklists, all those things. And the business was benefited because it was taken on with the idea that we need to always be changing and adapting to the environment as we grow. That's just a part of what it means to run a business. Don't follow the illusion that what you start with is what you have to be wed to your entire existence as a business. That's a myth. That's not true. Many businesses and most businesses that thrive are businesses that change over time and entering into each day consciously, just as we were talking about before, and looking at the big picture is part of that. So I want to say, be inspired to look at things with fresh eyes and know that you can change things. And you're pretty much one of the only people that can change things in the cafe. Those baristas that are thinking about leaving because the situation is not really what it needs to be for them to grow, or it's more difficult than it has to be. There's so much turnover that happens unnecessarily in the coffee shop. If you as a leader and as an owner find inspiration to change things and better things constantly, you're going to find that your turnover slows down significantly. Okay? So you have the ability to make a difference there. Now, no shop is perfect. Some are better than others at providing opportunities for growth, but you should not stick with a place out of principle only, or sacrifice, or wanting to help your coworkers or better the place in spite of what seems to be the opposite effort of leadership. Some places actively discourage exploration, opportunity, growth. If you've gone through all of the principles and steps that we just talked about and more, and know that it's not you, but it's an active kind of malevolent force from the cafe, a more toxic environment, then of course, I think it's time for you to get your resume together and start looking for opportunities that match your values, with the idea in mind that no shop is going to be perfect. Not every situation is going to be absolutely the right fit, the way that you would want it to be. But because of the resiliency that you've built up in the midst of this time, in the midst of this difficult time, the situations that come up that aren't as perfect in a better match for you won't seem as bad as they were if you had never developed that resiliency to start with. Now, you might need to leave a shop because it's not that it's bad. It's not that you are being treated poorly, but it's just not the right fit. It's too small. It's the wrong mission, or values, or whatever it is. They themselves are fine. And there are other baristas who would take your place, or other managers who would take your place, who would thrive in that environment. And you might look back and think like, well, how do they love that work environment? Well, to each their own. But the trajectory of your growth will outpace this shop, and you need something bigger or different, then move or stagnate. That's what needs to happen. It's like being repotted as a plant. The plant has a trajectory for growth based on what's, encoded in the seed. Eventually, you're going to need to get a bigger pot. It's not that the pot itself is bad. It's just that it's not the right fit at that time. And this is just the process we go through as professionals. It's not that you've failed. It's that you're growing. And that brings me to my final point here, and that is growth is not always the goal. At a certain point, you're going to stop growing in a particular area, and that's natural. The goal of growth is to reach a point where you've matured and then to maintain that maturity level. We can achieve skill, experience, and that maturity and then stay there and maintain it. I think that's healthy. To chase growth past that is kind of a sickness. Bodybuilders who take steroids to enhance their body, they push themselves past where their body is comfortable. And we're taught, yes, get out of the comfort zone. It's like a religious chant. But the cultish devotion to growth ignores the side effects of the unhealthy fixation of always growing. If your cells always grow, literally that's called cancer, okay? And I'm not saying that you should just worry that you want to improve. I think improvement is fine, but there is a point at which chasing improvement ignores where you've already improved. And we have to train ourselves to recognize the improvements and actually have a goal in mind where we discipline ourselves to say, okay, I'm comfortable with where I've become proficient in this skill, and I want to just maintain where I am now. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong also with wanting to improve in other areas of your life. I'm not trying to make us paranoid that is this unhealthy growth? Just balance your perspective of growth and make sure that you're able to recognize where it's becoming a bit of an unhealthy fixation. If you want to become a better manager and you want to be good at something like conflict resolution, if you become good at conflict resolution, you can't always tell yourself, you can always get better. You can always get better. You might get better, but if you always tell yourself you can get better and you never recognize how good you are, then that is what I call an unhealthy fixation on growth. So business is the same way. You don't necessarily want to expand past your means. There is a place for us in the industry, and so much of what we do as professionals is about exploring what is possible for us as individuals. And in order to know that, we need to challenge ourselves. We need to take in nourishment from the community and from our environment, and then grow and grow. And at a certain point, that growth starts to plateau. And we need to have the discipline to recognize that we've achieved something that is good and maintain it, instead of being worried that stopping or plateauing makes us weak or stagnant. This kind of thing is pervasive in every industry where people are worshiping the hustle all the time at the expense of their happiness and their families and their social life and all this stuff. They're afraid that if they don't sacrifice anything and everything, that they're going to get lazy. And I'm all about that middle road. I'm not saying that everything needs to be balanced, but everything has seasons. So at the end of all of this, I think just applying these things, these principles to your work life will gain you some clarity. They will help you in your quest for some more motivation in the midst of these difficult circumstances that I assure you are naturally occurring and will always be a part of your career in some way. How we go about dealing with them as they come our way will determine how we go about thriving in the midst of them in the future. And I hope that some of these things have really helped you to that end. So if you want the show notes, of course, you can go to keystotheshop.com On the sidebar, enter your email address, and then you'll get the show notes delivered to your inbox on a bi-weekly basis, along with news and links and resources. And if you want to contact me directly, you can do so by emailing chris@keystotheshop.com. If you have feedback, questions, comments, or inquiries about consultation or training, that is the email to do so. So chris@keystotheshop.com. And that's it for today's show. Thank you so much again for joining me. I hope it was a good one and spoke to your situation in some way. Have an amazing week. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.